Greetings for Navaratri. Thank you for joining us here at Sankat Mochan Hanuman Temple. We've just left off where Rama, Lakshman, and Sita are just arriving in Chitrakoot. And we're going to begin tonight back in Ayodhya, where they have just seen Rama depart. Thanks again for joining. Ayodhya in grief. Sumantra watched with a heavy heart as Rama's boat swiftly floated out across the river Ganga. He camped beside the river for 2 more nights, hoping for Rama's return. But when word came back to him that the 3 travelers had been seen on the path to Chitrakoot, he gave up hope and set off back to Ayodhya. 2 days later, with empty chariot and weeping horses, he entered the desolate city. The emperor and queen pressed him for news of Rama. They wanted every last detail, hoping against hope for Rama's return. Sumantra delivered Rama's messages, but he only succeeded in confirming what everyone already feared. Rama, Sita, and Lakshman would not be seen again in Ayodhya for 14 years. Faced with the awful finality of what he had done, the emperor was lost in an ocean of despair in which his breathing was a whirlpool. His crying was crashing waves, Kaikeyi's words were alligators, and the opposite shore was Sita and Rama. "Take me to Rama and Sita," begged Kaushalya. "Take me there quickly on your chariot, or I shall instead go to the house of death." "Your foolishness has destroyed us all," she accused her husband bitterly. Then in remorse, she took his trembling hands. "My love, I should not speak to you so. Grief has destroyed my patience. These last 5 nights have seemed like 5 years." But her harsh words penetrated the emperor's dull consciousness like a sharp sword. He fell into an uneasy sleep in which distant memories flooded in his mind. Once more he was a young prince, proud and handsome, and he loved to hunt. One night he ventured alone into the jungle to practice the skill of shooting at an unseen target, aiming by sound only, and waited in the darkness beside a pond. He heard a gurgling sound which he thought was the sound of an elephant drinking, and released a serpent-like arrow. From the darkness he heard a human cry. In horror he ran forward and discovered a young boy, pierced through the heart by his arrow. The sound he had heard was the sound of the boy filling a water pot, which now lay beside him. Blood trickled from the boy's mouth. "Oh, shame!" cried the boy. "Who has done this terrible deed? I have no enemy, and I am the only support of my parents, who are blind and invalid. I came here to draw water for them, but now I am mortally wounded and can no longer protect them." The boy begged Prince Dasarat to remove the arrow, which bit into him like fire. The prince pulled out the arrow, but as soon as he did so, the boy stared at him with silent agony, and he died. Alone in the darkness and sick with remorse, Dasarat filled the pot and took it to the boy's parents, whom he found nearby. He knew he must tell them the awful truth. "By accident I have killed your son. Now you must punish me." The blind old man spoke. "Without our son we cannot survive. Tomorrow we will die on his funeral pyre. Because you did this in ignorance, you will not be punished in hell, but because you have given us such pain, I curse you also to lose your son in old age. And the pain of your loss will kill you." Dasarat woke with a start. It was night and he was alone and cold. In a broken voice he called for Kaushalya. "Touch me, I cannot see you. I'm about to die." But Kaushalya heard nothing. "My memory is fading. I cannot see my beloved Rama. Fortunate are those who will see his sweet face as he returns from the forest like the autumn moon after the rains." I hear nothing, my hands are numb. I feel myself slipping away. My darling Rama, where are you? O cruel Kaikeyi. And with these words on his lips, the emperor left this world in the dead of night. Ayodhya had no emperor. A land without an emperor is like a dried up river. Rains cease to fall, sons disobey fathers, wives disrespect husbands, young girls walk in fear of violation. Doors are locked at night. Merchants do not flourish, and holy men are neglected. Without its emperor, Ayodhya was a night without stars. Kaushalya found the dead emperor and cried out, Kaikeyi, you have your wish. The kingdom is yours. I shall follow my dead husband into the flames. Ministers took away the body of Dasarat and preserved it in oil until a son could be brought to perform the funeral rites. They decided Bharat should be made king, and they sent messengers to Kaikeyi to fetch him and his younger brother Satrughna. The messengers rode with lavish gifts for the Kaikeyi king through 4 days and 3 nights. In Kaikeyi, Bharat was uneasy. His mind was filled with disturbing images from his dreams. He saw his father lying in a muddy pool. He saw the earth shake, volcanoes erupt, and the moon fall from the sky. Then he saw his father, garlanded with red flowers, dragged southwards in a chariot pulled by donkeys. When the messengers arrived from Ayodhya, he was not surprised. They revealed nothing, only that he was needed urgently, but he knew. When such things are dreamed, one prepares for death. Burdened with gifts from the Kaikeyi monarch and accompanied by a small army, he set off in convoy for Ayodhya, reaching there 7 days later, 10 days after the demise of his father and 15 days after Rama's departure. Arriving at the gates, he saw the city streets empty and unswept, and his apprehension grew. Immediately, Bharat rushed to his father's apartments, but they were empty. He went to find Kaikeyi. Where is your father? Is he not with you? Where is father? Is he not with you? O son, your father is no more. Hearing the dreaded words, Bharat fell down and began beating the floor with his powerful arms. Get up. You must be strong. You are now king. Kaikeyi told Bharat her good news. Rama exiled, the throne given to Bharat, and Dasarat dead. I've done all this for you, my dear son. Now the kingdom is yours, just as you always wanted. But Bharat slowly took all this in. You have done this to please me? He asked incredulously. What possible wish could I have to take the throne from Rama and see my father dead? Rama is the source of my strength. What can I do without him? He paced back and forth and then spoke with resolve. I will bring Rama back from the forest and go into exile in his place. Then his anger rose and he roared like a mountain. Lion. O cruel woman, you have shamed our royal house. You have driven away my beloved brother, and you have killed your own husband. You are my enemy, disguised as my mother, and I no longer wish to speak with you. You should either leave this place or kill yourself. A crowd gathered to hear Bharat vent his anger. Kaushalya accused him bitterly. Now you can take the throne which your mother worked so hard to get for you. I'm sure you will be very happy. If you like, you can send me away too. I will go to join Rama. Cut to the core to hear these words, Bharat swore his innocence. He spoke not just to her, but to all of Ayodhya with words that seared into the heart of all present. I knew nothing of my mother's plans, nor did I ever desire the throne. Whoever wished Rama to be banished is cursed 100 times. He repeated over and over again, let them be perpetually barred from heaven. Let them forget all the sacred scriptures. Let them suffer constant illness. Let them go mad and wander as beggars. Becoming more and more distraught, at last he fell headlong on the floor. Kaushalya, in tears, hurried forward to comfort the stricken youth, taking his head on her lap. She soothed him with gentle words. My child, stop now. You are innocent of any fault. Be comforted. The next day, Vasistha urged Bharat to perform his duty as the eldest available son of Dasarat. The funeral must be performed. A pyre was built at the royal cremation ground beside the river Sarayu, and Bharat walked in procession with Dasarat's body, which was decked with jewels and flowers. He lit the fire and watched as his father's remains were reduced to ashes. Then, as was the custom, he stayed with his family in seclusion for 12 days of mourning. On the 13th day, he returned to the cremation ground to collect his father's whitened bones. Crying inconsolably, he and Satrughna tossed the bones and ashes into the river. Life and death, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, intoned Vasistha. These dualities cannot be avoided. Learn to accept what you cannot change and give up sorrow. Next chapter, In Search of Rama. Vasistha wanted normal life restored to the troubled kingdom, so he urged Bharat to accept the throne. You are now heir as ordained by your father. Take what is rightfully yours. But Bharat was not to be tempted. The throne and I myself belong to Rama. I will bring him back to Ayodhya and put him on the throne while I take his place in the forest. Accordingly, Bharat ordered a great expedition to go in search of Rama. It was to be made up of a vast army of elephants, chariots, and cavalry. To prepare the way, teams of engineers worked day and night to transform the path of the Ganga into a broad highway lined with trees, with magnificent pavilions along the way. All this activity inspired the people of Ayodhya. With Bharat as their commander, they felt renewed hope, and the leading citizens joined the expedition in festive mood. Early one morning, when all was ready, Bharat, the hero of the Ikshvaku race, set off, followed by the vast host of Ikshvaku, archers borne in chariots, richly decorated elephants, mounted cavalry, and in their mindset in their midst, the three queens of Ayodhya riding in chariots of royal splendor. All minds were fixed on the joyful prospect of finding Rama. Soon they reached the Ganga, where the huge company halted for the night. Guha, the tribal chief to Rama, saw the army entering his territory and was uneasy, wondering at Bharat's motive in pursuing Rama with an army. Bearing gifts, he went down to meet him. How could I have any evil intentions toward my elder brother, who is just like a father to me? Bharat assured him. We want Rama to come back and be king. Bharat appeared confident of achieving this, but secretly he wondered whether he could succeed. Reassured of Bharat's good intentions, Guha offered to help them across the Ganga and guide them to their next stop, the hermitage of Bharadvaja. That night, Guha showed Bharat and his mothers the place where Rama and Sita had spent the night, guarded by Lakshman. See here the blades of grass crushed as Rama slept, said Bharat. And here the strands of gold and thread from Sita's cloth, which have stuck to the hard ground where she lay. A devoted wife will undergo any hardship in the company of her lord. For myself, I vow to sleep on the bare ground and live on fruits and roots in the forest for the remainder of Rama's exile, so that his vow will be fulfilled. Bharat could not hide his emotions and fell to the ground in tears. He was consoled by Kaushalya, who hugged him close to her breast. "Be strong, Bharat. You are now my only support." The Ikshvaku host crossed the river Ganga on 500 boats supplied by Guha. As far as the eye could see, the river teemed with boats and rafts of all sizes, loaded with men, women, and horses, while elephants swam like glistening mountains through the throng. Following the path taken by Rama, they soon reached the hermitage of Bharadvaja. Bharat halted the army and went forward alone to meet the holy sage. Again, his motives were questioned. "I know you to be Rama's brother," spoke Bharadvaja, "who must now be ruling in his place. I trust you come in peace." "I beg you not to think of me as a threat," protested Bharat. "My only motive is to bring Rama back to Ayodhya." The sage was pleased to hear this and happily extended his hospitality to Bharat and all his company. "You are a simple hermit," said Bharat, "and I have a huge army waiting at some distance so as not to overrun your ashram. You could not possibly cater for all of us." "I will entertain all of you no matter how many you are," replied Bharadvaja. "Bring your army here and you will see the power of a simple hermit." So ordered the sage. Bharat called for the army, while Bharadvaja invoked divine spirits to help him look after them. He put forth his mystic power until powerful beings from all over the universe were invisibly assembled at that spot. Then he began to work his enchantment. A cool breeze wafted through the trees and showers of flowers rained down from the heavens. Maidens appeared dancing to the sound of celestial music. As astonished soldiers crowded into the grove, all their cares fell away. Smooth green lawns, interspersed with perfumed fruit trees, appeared everywhere with gardens and fountains and lovely pavilions decked with flowers and soft cushions. All imaginable kinds of delicious foods and drinks were served in unlimited quantities by beautiful women. As the men began to feast, they found that no matter how much they ate, they never felt full. Lovely maidens tended to their needs, taking them down to the riverside where they massaged them with scented oils and bathed them with fragrant balms. Animal careers tended the horses and elephants, grooming and feeding them until they glowed with health and satisfaction, so that their keepers could no longer recognize them. The trees took on their human forms to dance and serve the guests. Through the night, feasting and revelry continued until all fell into a deep and dreamless sleep. They awoke refreshed, the fatigue and discomforts of their journey gone, to find themselves back in the forest outside Bharadvaja's ashram, as if nothing had happened. Bharat and his family took grateful leave of Bharadvaja, but before they left, the sage wanted to greet Bharat's mothers. Bharat respectfully introduced Kaushalya and Sumitra, but when he came to Kaikeyi, his demeanor changed. This is proud and cruel Kaikeyi. She is the cause of all of our suffering." His voice choked with tears of anger as he spoke. "Do not hate Kaikeyi," admonished the sage, "for Rama's banishment serves a deeper purpose and will yet bring happiness to all." With Bharadvaja's advice ringing in his ears, Bharat set off with his army on the final march to Chitrakoot. Soldiers, chariots, horses, and elephants moved through the dense forest like a monsoon cloud, scattering the deer and bears and driving squawking birds into the treetops. They found Chitrakoot Hill abundant, spotted with deer and forest flowers. A scout called out, "Ahead I see smoke rising from the trees. This surely is Rama's camp." Word reached Bharat, who ordered the troops to halt while he went forward with Sumantra, the king's trusted advisor, his eyes fixed nervously on thin blue columns of smoke ahead. Next chapter, Accepting the Inevitable. Arm in arm with Sita, Rama walked in the groves of Chitrakoot. He was happy to be here with only Sita and Lakshman for company, and didn't in the least miss his friends and family or the burden of the state back home. See how lovely this mountain is. It is home to tigers and bears who will not harm us, to deer and flocks of birds. Brightly colored flowers grow among the rocks of many hues. Mangoes, papayas, pomegranates, and other fruits hang in abundance among the flowering trees. Nearby flowers from the Mandakini, her banks overhung with shady views. Her waters full of swans, cranes, and lotus flowers. I will happily spend my 14 years of exile here with you, my sweetheart. Just then Rama became aware that something was disturbing the animals. He heard the distant trumpeting of elephants and saw a dust cloud drifting up from the valley below. Lakshman, he called, "What is this disturbance?" Lakshman scaled a tree and gazed to the north. "I see an army with elephants, horses, and chariots," he shouted down. "Put out the fire and have your bow at the ready." "Can you see whose army it is?" inquired Rama. Scanning the massed ranks of men and equipment, Lakshman made out a banner unfurled in the breeze. "I see the white trunk and silver leaves of the emblem of Ayodhya. It must be Bharat," he concluded, "come to kill us both and assert his sovereignty." We will fight him," he declared. "He lies at the root of all your suffering, and he deserves to be killed. And I shall also kill Kaikeyi. Then you can rule the world undisturbed." As he spoke, Lakshman's voice filled with fury. Rama did not at all approve of Lakshman's aggressive words and replied with equal vehemence, "Consider what you are saying, Lakshman. I have given my word of honor to renounce the kingdom in favor of Bharat, and now you want me to kill him and sit on the throne stained with his blood? I feel sure that Bharat has come with love in his heart, anxious to see me. But if you wish, I will command him to hand over the kingdom to you. I am sure he will do it immediately." Corrected by his elder brother, Lakshman felt ashamed. "Perhaps it may be father who has come to see you," he conceded. "You are right, Lakshman. He understands our trials in the forest and has come to take us home. But can you see the royal insignia of his white umbrella?" Lakshman could not and despondently climbed down to the ground. Meanwhile, Bharat climbed steadily with his companions up through the trees, his eyes fixed above him on the column of smoke. Some distance behind, at a slower pace, followed Vasistha and the three queens. Bharat came to a halt. Before him the hillside leveled off, and he saw in a clearing the three small huts built from leafy branches. Beside them leaned shining bows and quivers with swords and shields emblazoned with flowers of gold. In front of the huts was an altar upon which burned a sacred fire. In the midst of this scene, Bharat saw his brother Rama, sitting with his hair tied in a great tangled knot and wearing a beard, his body smeared with dirt and dressed in deerskin and strips of bark. Rama, with shoulders of a lion, looked to Bharat like Vishnu, protector of the earth. On either side of him sat Lakshman and Sita. Choking with emotion, Bharat ran forward, crying out, "O Ram, my brother, my noble brother, what has become of you?" Rama took his younger brother in his strong arms and comforted him. "My poor boy, you have come here without your father. I hope the emperor is in good health and has not left this world. I hope you are listening to your counselors and governing the kingdom wisely. But tell me, dear brother, why have you left Ayodhya and come here dressed like an ascetic?" "O Ram, do you not know? Our father has indeed left this world with a broken heart and gone to heaven. I have come to beg you to return and brighten the empire as the moon brightens the autumn sky. All of us, ministers, gurus, the entire people of Kausalya, beg you to come back." When Rama heard of his father's death, he sank to the ground. "With father gone, what remains for me in Ayodhya? My duty now is to obey this order and live in the forest, and yours is to obey his order and rule the kingdom. Now let me pay homage to my departed father." Rama led Lakshman and Sita down to the riverbank to offer water and fruits in honor of his father's spirit. Returning to the huts, he clasped Bharat, Lakshman, and Satrughna, and together they poured out their grief. Far below, the waiting troops heard their cries, like the roaring of lions, and knew the brothers were united once more. Forest animals fled and birds flew confused into the sky. The soldiers converged from all sides, unable to bear the separation from Rama. Their faces bathed in tears, they burst into the clearing and crowded around Rama. Some fell at his feet, some embraced him, while others gazed on his face. Soon Vashistha arrived with the queens. Rama touched his feet with respect. Many tears and hugs were exchanged, and the company sat and talked as darkness fell. In the morning, all settled down in a circle, full of curiosity to hear what could be said, with Rama and Bharat in the center. Bharat began, "Kaikeyi has now got what she wanted, though it will send her to hell. The kingdom has been given to me. I, however, cannot rule it, and hereby hand it back to you." Rama spoke in reply, his voice clear and calm. "As the sun rises and sets, it steals away the lives of all who live. Yet we greet each new day without thinking that... As the sun rises and sets, it steals away the lives of all who live. Yet we greet each new day without thinking that with it comes our death. Indeed, death is our constant companion in this world. Therefore, I say, don't waste your tears on others. Grieve for yourself, for you will die soon. We are all like pieces of driftwood floating on the ocean. Sometimes we come together, sometimes we are far apart. Our families, wealth, and fortune are thus made and broken by the force of time. None of us can escape from the path already taken by our parents and grandparents. So why do we stand at the roadside to mourn their passing? Therefore, my brother, do not grieve for our father, who lived a long and righteous life, and has now entered the celestial world. Give up your weeping, go home to the glorious city of Ayodhya, and I shall stay here, and together we shall do our father's bidding." Rama fell silent. "But your duty is not here, it is in Ayodhya," countered Bharat. "Let me go to the forest for 14 years in your place." "You cannot stand in my place. You will be a ruler of people. I will be a ruler of wildlife." Rama was not to be swayed from his vow. "But after 14 years, I promise I shall return and rule the world." As the momentous debate went on, hosts of rishis, unseen by ordinary people, gathered in the air to witness it. They wanted Rama to put an end to Ravana, so they spoke to Bharat with one voice. "Noble prince," they advised, "accept Rama's advice. He must fulfill his father's obligation." With these words they disappeared, and Bharat, realizing that he was powerless to bring Rama back, relented. "Very well, Rama. I will return to Ayodhya without you, but still you will be our king." He offered Rama a pair of wooden sandals. "Place your feet on these sandals, and I will install them on the throne in your absence." Rama placed his feet on the sandals. Bharat triumphantly lifted them on his head, announcing, "These sandals will represent you, our king, whom I will always serve. If, however, you do not return after 14 years, I will die by entering fire." "So be it," concluded Rama. He embraced Bharat with tearful eyes. "Forgive your mother and take care of her." He turned to his mothers, who were choked with tears, and said goodbye. With a long look at their beloved Rama, unshaken in his duty, like the Himalayan mountains, the crowd backed away in awe. He turned and entered his cottage as the crowd melted into the trees. Inside the cottage with Sita and Lakshman, he sat down and wept. Bharat had done his best. Now he took Rama's words to heart. Accepting what could not be changed, he returned to Ayodhya with Rama's sandals and shed no more tears. On reaching Ayodhya, he found it darkened like a cloudy sky, in streets empty and silent. His father's chambers where so many tragic events had occurred in the last 3 months seemed like an empty cave holding the memory of a great lion who had once lived there. After bringing his mothers safely back to their quarters, he made an announcement. "I shall not live here without Rama. I will stay at the lonely retreat of Nandigran, 14 miles from here." Leaving his mothers in the care of Vashista and taking with him Satrugna and the loyal army, he left for Nandigram. There he installed Rama's sandals on the throne and placed over them the royal umbrella. When affairs of state were brought to him, he first submitted them before Rama in the guise of his shoes. In this way, dressed as a forest ascetic, with his hair unkept and eating only fruits and roots, Bharat governed the kingdom and waited for Rama's return. After Bharat's visit, Rama was no longer happy in Chitrakoot. It held painful memories, and the disruption caused by Bharat's army had lured man-eating demons to the area, who started disturbing the ascetics who lived there. It was rumored that they were led by Kara, the cruel brother of Ravan. The leader of the forest sages came to warn Rama of the danger, then he and his followers left in search of safer parts. Although they left Rama, the sages never forgot his beauty and gravity, and felt his presence always with them in their hearts. So Rama led his companions deeper into the wild regions of Dandaka forest. Their first stop was the ashram of Atri. The sage asked Rama to protect the forest community from the Rakshasas, who lived on human blood. He explained to the fearless Rama and Lakshmana where they were to be found. Atri's wife was named Anasuya, one with envy. For in her heart there was no anger. Atri's wife was named Anasuya, one without envy. For in her heart there was no anger. Frail and white-haired after a long life of simplicity and self-denial, she gathered Sita in her arms. "Fortunate are you," she said, "because your eyes are always fixed upon your husband. A woman has no greater friend than her husband. Be virtuous and devote yourself to him, and you will be rewarded in heaven." She blessed Sita with enchanted ornaments and smeared on her skin celestial balm, so that her radiance would never fade amid the hardships of the jungle. Then she wished to hear from Sita the story of her marriage and listened with rapt attention as Sita recounted how Rama had won her hand. While they sat together, the sun sank over the horizon. "Listen to the cooing of the birds as they settle in their nests," she said, "and see the trees fading into twilight. Now the moon rises among the stars and demons of the night creep from their lairs. I wish to hear more of your sweet words, but it is time for you to join your glorious husband." Then Sita adorned herself with Anasuya's gifts and bowed before her. Sita came before Rama, shining like the moon. They spent the night in peace and departed at dawn, following the path pointed out to them by their host Atri. Rama, the scourge of his enemies, with Sita and Lakshman, disappeared into the deep forest as the sun vanishes into the banks of clouds. Okay, and that concludes night 3 of our readings. Thank you so much for joining us, and Om.